but being able to like weave a very like atypical narrative leading to this building, kind of framing the Chicago Tribune Tower as the keystone accomplishment of the great skyscraper race. Fuck you, New York. No. New York has beautiful architecture. The Singer
I don't want to
Building
offend
is
anybody
fantastic.
in this y'all sleeping category, but also New York can go fuck itself. Second city, my ass. If your pizza's so good, why do you only get it in New York? Taking some of the heat off of you.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special New Year's bonus episode of the Overly Sarcastic podcast. I am Blue, in persona, and I'm joined by Red.
I attempted to copycat the Starbucks Cold Buster medicine ball thing, and I have not succeeded, but it's pretty good tea regardless.
Tragic. And Indigo.
I thought I usually did the intro for these episodes, but I think it's very funny that you've decided to go ahead and do it anyway.
It's
Well, it's
been
once a year.
a while.
Yeah. We can't commit to specific bits if we don't remember what they are.
That's the only kind of bit we've ever committed to.
If you'd like to intro the pod in a more New Year'sy way, feel free.
I hope you've all had a wonderful 2023 because we're continuing our annual tradition of the New Year's bonus episode of the Ozpod. Say it with me, kids. It's Ozpod, one word, like making it catch on. Where we're going to kind of we're going to recap some of a few different categories of videos for you, talk about some of the stuff we've been up to in the last year, and then we'll move on to our traditional Q&A section. Oh man, that was hard to say for some reason.
Good read. Can we get one more?
Q&A section of the podcast.
Okay, a couple more exertions. You're falling off a small ledge.
Yeah, all right. With escalating intensity. Perfect. That was real good.
Thank you. But we'll jump in so that we don't spend too much time at the top of the podcast talking about things that aren't the podcast, and jump into our first category here for the New Year's bonus 2023. This is going to be the most viewed videos of the year for Red and Blue. So if I could get my silent drum roll that will be edited out in post, please.
Edited out in post?
What?
Rome was a mess. And I mean that on every level.
At which point Leto's two children slaughter Niobe's children, and she turns into a rock about it.
But consider, Rome cannot die.
Hubris. It's okay when the gods do it.
The most viewed videos of the year. For Red, it was Miscellaneous Myths, Artemis and Apollo, and for Blue, The Complete History of Rome Summarized.
Woo! Which was impressive, because that one came out, like, nearly last minute.
Yeah, so the way that this category evolved over the course of us talking about what videos we were going to put in the category over the last 2 weeks was, at the beginning of December, I was like, oh man, this Rome video is doing really well. I mean, it's not going to be the most viewed video of the year. That's still the Spider-Man detail diatribe, but like, man, like, we waited until January, maybe, and then last week, on Monday, I was like, oh, if I was still joking, I'd say that this might be the most viewed video of the year. And then by Wednesday, I was like, hey, Red, by Friday, this is going to be the most viewed video of the year. It's just kept going.
Yeah.
It's just kept going.
Yep, normally there's a bit of a logarithmic drop-off. This one just escape velocity.
On the curve.
So,
it's,
yeah.
I joke that it's like the Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck thing where the audience is like, oh my gosh, woo, and Bugs is like, Daffy, it's amazing, they love it, they want more, and Daffy, who like blew himself up in the trick, is like, amazing, but I can only do it once, so I'm glad it turned out well on this one. It was the culmination of years of work. We'll talk about another video later that's kind of in like a similar camp to this one, but it was insane to put this together and not only like think, okay, like this will kind of start like low in the beginning and it'll grow over time, but to have popped off so much in so short a span, for lack of a better way to describe it, that doesn't happen to my videos.
No.
And it was cool that it did for this one, so I felt really jazzed about that. Not that it's like Blue doesn't get enough views. No, I don't care, but it's like
good.
The history has always been a little bit more niche, just by the nature of the kind of investment you have to do to get people to be interested in it. And I've been like, I got my comfortable, like, this is how many views, like, there's never a competition over here at OSP.
No.
But seeing the numbers be this high is like, oh, people really like these.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
No,
great.
it was
Nice.
great. You did a full-on feature-length documentary about the entire history of the Roman Empire, and you were like, if anybody watches it, that's fine. But this was really for me. And then it's like, oh no, people actually love this. Cool, that's
This
great.
is actually for a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah. And on my end,
crazy.
the Artemis and Apollo one was interesting because it had sort of been haunting me for a while because I'd started the research process on it like a couple of years back because, they're like the two big names in the Olympian pantheon. Like you probably, like, if you don't know that much about Greek mythology, you probably know like Zeus is the main guy, and you might have like heard something, turn Hades into Satan and been like, I know that guy, he's bad. But like the upper echelon of like how well known the Olympians are, Artemis and Apollo, the twins that are so different yet so similar. And I was like, this is weird. Hold on. And the research process quickly turned into a rabbit hole, which is my favorite kind of research process. And the degree to which I was like, I'm not finding the answers that should be easy to find if these guys followed a similar path to other like major deities in the Greek pantheon that came from somewhere else.
Or even to each other.
Or even to each other. It's like, yeah, Artemis and Apollo and the Mycenaean records are worshipped in completely different places. Interesting. Stuff like that. Or like, okay, Artemis has this whole thing going on and Apollo has this whole thing going on, but it kind of looks like it was a case of like convergent evolution. They became more closely bundled together and began to cover more things that put them in concert with each other. And once you get to the point where it's like Artemis is the moon and Apollo is the sun, it's like, okay, these guys are inseparable. They're too thematically consistent. But there's a long way to go from there to get from like, this guy is like a god of prophecy and seeing the future and maybe music. Like maybe he also covers divine inspiration. And this lady, she's a terrifying woodland beast basically.
Yeah.
And it's like, and they're twins. But honestly, that's one of my favorite tropes. And I think that's probably why this became so popular. Cause like the whole like, no way, bro, that's your sister. Like that's one of the funniest things that can ever happen. And like they both have that exact scenario. Artemis butching it up in the woods with all of her lady friends, and it's like, that's your brother, and she's like, I know. Just anyway, so I can see why it got so popular. But I had a good time with it. It was one of the deep dives where I was like, okay, I think I haven't fucked anything up too severely. Hopefully, people like this one. People were like, yeah, I always get really like in the weeds of like, man, I have to make sure that like I debunk all the major like misunderstandings about these guys, and I've gotten better about not doing that, in large part because as we've gotten deeper into researching this space, I know less about what the average person knows about these guys. Because like the most I got was people in the comments being like, I was under the impression that Artemis and Apollo didn't get along with each other, and I was like, why? And then I was like, oh, Percy Jackson. That's the only reason why. But even then, it's like, oh, they're so different, a bit of an odd, like, oh, she's all serious and he's kind of a goober. But you read any Greek mythology, and it's like, these two mostly just hang out with each other or just don't bother each other. Like, they're bros. They like each other. Siblings do be like that sometimes. So I wouldn't have even known what to debunk if I'd been trying to do that. So I'm glad I didn't, and I'm glad people liked it.
Yeah. I really like the way that the Artemis and Apollo video turned out, and obviously the views back it up. Everyone was so interested to learn about them. Tracing the evolution over all the different generations of like, okay, this is like, Mycenaean version of them as we see in the Iliad. Here's what it might have been like before and where we even got to from there, and then going down to like classical Greece, and it's like once we kind of have the version that we understand, Rome's already here.
Yeah. Well, that was so interesting.
And Ovid just was born 2 minutes later to write this down.
Well, it's really weird running into like the early Roman stuff in like the 500s, like almost the earliest stuff that they had.
I wouldn't know anything about that.
But like the fact that they'd already absorbed Apollo at that point was interesting. Like I had no idea that was what was happening. Like before they started really Hellenizing themselves, they were like, this guy's great. Let's just slap him into central Italy. There are tons of really old like temples to Apollo in his medicine capacity from like the 400s-ish. It's like, there was a plague. We got over it. Let's build a temple to Apollo to say thanks and please don't smite us again. And like, these are gods that were so intrinsically linked into, or at least Apollo was, into how the civilization like functioned day to day, that you get a lot of this information where otherwise it's kind of this like distant, folk tale there in these myths. But with Apollo, it's like they built a building because there was a plague in like 432 and they were like, please don't do that again. And he was like, cool. Just, I don't know. I thought it was really fun. A lot of them are very like distant, and this one wasn't.
Yeah, it's It's always cool to see like what resonates the most with people over the course of the year, and these ones we're going to talk a lot about, like other videos that we liked a lot this year. Obviously, the worst 5 of the year. Could you
Top and
imagine?
bottom 5.
Yeah,
Yeah.
For
No,
own stuff,
3
but,
will shock you.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, speaking of videos that we liked, we got to move on to our next category here. Your favorite of your own videos. So Red's favorite Red video and Blue's favorite Blue video.
So our dang rigorous scholarly efforts have already scuttled our chances of making an even 9 out of this mess.
Iram of the Pillars, the city of Ubar. The treasure is a magic city full of magic water that poisons you.
We've officially exhausted the list of realms I'm even halfway certain about. A whopping 5 of them.
Better than all these other trash games. Halo 3, more like Halo P. Get out of here.
Red's favorite video was Legend Summarize the 9 Realms, and Blue's was One Last Scene, Drake's Final Treasure.
Red, let's talk about the myths. Let's start with you on this one.
Yeah. The 9 Realms one, another rabbit hole. I always have fun with them. I complain
They're so
about how
good.
long they are.
They're so good.
I do them because I enjoy them. The research process becoming more complicated than I expected is my favorite treat. And with the 9 Realms, it was one of those ones where I said in the video, I legitimately set out being like, I can finally do just like a normal like numbered list. It'll be great. I can just go through them and be like, this is everything we know about Svartalfheim. And then first things first, it doesn't exist. And then suddenly my whole plan went off the rails. But it was also fun because at the time I was working on it, I was doing a certain amount of traveling, and I didn't have my full like frame set up. So I was like, I could probably do something really efficient here and just do big, complicated illustrations of each realm, like posters. Because I think at the time, for Rolling with Difficulty, I'd been doing the Planescape posters, and I was like, these are great. I feel like I can apply this concept to something a little bit more central to what I do, like, by myself. And it was
were working
really
on those
fun.
Planescape posters when we were in Iceland.
I was, yeah. And then like 2 months later, I was working on these, which was a lot of fun. And I had a really good time just sitting down and doing like a large, complicated illustration. Normally, that's not really how my brain works, but in this specific case, I was like getting in and doing the details and knowing this will look good when I zoom. This is fun, and I like this a lot. And also just being able to be like, here's everything we know about this realm. It's 2 lines of poetry. You're welcome. Also, this is the one where I started getting like really serious about citing, like, this is the specific translation I'm using. This is the specific edition. Because with Norse mythology especially, I've made that mistake before. Greek mythology, there's kind of like there's a surplus of cool translations that you can use. And most of them, some of them are like more poetic than others. Some of them take weird liberties. But after a certain point, they're kind of all communicating the same information. Norse mythology, categorically
Not so much.
untrue. You really got to be careful.
Yeah.
So that was kind of fun, just going in and being like, this is specifically from this edition of the Prose Edda, and this is specifically from this bit of that one, and this is all the information we have, I promise. All things considered, considering it was a Norse mythology video, and I could have gotten actually much harder in the comments, I think that one went about as well as it possibly could have.
I did enjoy the ones where you were getting into the dicier realms on the list of like, if you don't think Svartalfheim counts, then you gotta get Asgard out of there too, motherfucker. Well, like whichever pairs it was.
Alfheim and Svartalfheim categorically cannot exist. Because like Alfheim, that one's at least name dropped, but it's name dropped in the same breath as like the part of Asgard that Thor lives in. You're like, great, okay, cool. So it's a little cul-de-sac, it's a suburb of Asgard. That's not. And then once you start looking for like, are the Dark Elves even a thing? It's like, well, yes, but actually no. They might be dwarves, and also they might not be real, because, this is a story original where he was like in the same breath being like, and lo, the Aesir, they reside in dork-ass loser heaven, and above them 2 heavens even cooler that they cannot go into, that are only inhabited by light elves. It's like, yeah. Source, please. Little citation needed pops up.
It was revealed to him in a dream, Red. You have to have some respect.
Probably, yeah. God. Anyway, so I had a good time with that. You're pulling out a late contender for this one. Your last
very
video
late
of the year.
Contender, yeah. I was really pleased with a lot of the videos that I made this year. Rome was the far and away the most popular with the audiences. And I'm very glad for that. It represents the biggest like singular accomplishment of cumulative work that I've done over years and years. But I think like singularly on the channel this year was the best videos that I've ever made, just as a slate. Like, I've obviously had really good ones from the past as well, but this year, like, front to back, I don't think I had one that I would call a stinker. I mean, some are still better than others, but I was so pleased with everything that I made this year. So it was very hard to pick, but I just had a soft spot for this Uncharted one because as I was putting together the presentation, I felt myself loving this game even more than I did at the start of it, when I knew, like, this is the best ending in a video game and my favorite love story, or sorry, the best love story in video games and one of my favorite endings in a video game. I'll be categorical about one, but I'll leave some ambiguity for the other. But even as I was getting into it, like, after starting from that premise, going through and playing through Uncharted 4, watching back through a bunch of Uncharted 1, 2, and 3, I was like, oh no, these games are masterpieces. I love this so much, and learned more about it, more so than I usually find in the course of prepping a detailed diatribe and investigating stuff. It was so fun to put that together and to feel myself getting more deeply enamored with this game that I've already loved so much, and being able to communicate that. I was really happy with how much I was able to convey. The fact that I was able to have so much clip coverage, because usually when we're dealing with movies and TV, the clips are really aggressively claimed, but with video games, there's kind of a general, like, it's your gameplay. This happens to be a cutscene, but it's your gameplay. It's fundamentally transformative. I won't tell if you don't tell. The Sony is categorically very nice about that, just as a rule, and I'm thankful for them for that. But being able to use so many clips was great, and just talking about those games was super fun. Of course, doing it with the Nando collaboration is always a real treat. In this case, one last scene. We've done one marvelous scene, or no, actually, we did one excellent scene, one villainous scene, which was the Castlevania, one musical scene, which was your Kung Fu Panda 2
Kung Fu Panda thing,
from last year. That was a good one. And now this one with Uncharted. My Doctor Strange one from last year is a kind of like soft late entry into one marvelous scene. That's the one that I would have done, but we didn't have the detailed diatribe show yet. So all of the detailed diatribes that we had this year, I really, really liked a lot. Again, it's my favorite single year slate of detailed diatribes that we've done, and it was very hard choosing between them. The Spider-Man one was the most viewed detailed diatribe that I had this year. Second most viewed video after Rome for me. But it was...
and it's near and dear to your
really
heart because it's Spider-Man.
Yeah, exactly. 2 games for 2 detailed diatribes where I show my whole ass. And then the fact that the Spider-Man 2 game was really good. Yeah,
I mean, that's what you want, because we've been on the front lines of past quality is no guarantee of future quality, so it's always nice when a sequel's actually good.
Sometimes it's nice to be proven wrong in the best way possible.
It's nice to have a win. And speaking of spreading things that are nice around, let's move on to your favorite of the others videos. So Red's favorite blue video and Blue's favorite red video.
And bluntly, this isn't something most people like to think about very much.
Kratos is like, I am making the polite choice to not kill you.
As a personification, it basically just puts a face to a garden variety existential crisis.
This detailed diatribe will be a solo act for the next half hour to conclude.
Red's favorite blue video was Blue's favorite red video was Legends Summarize. Nope, I'm reading the wrong category. I'm so sorry.
Take 2. Roll it back.
Take 2.
Effort noise. You're falling off a ledge.
Red's favorite video... God damn.
Come on, man. Come on. Hold it together. We're professionals.
Red's favorite of Blue's videos was Detailed Diatribe, Breaking Fate in God of War Ragnarok, and Blue's favorite red video was Trope Talk, Personifying Death.
Yay.
Yeah.
The full gamut of severity on that one. I think that the God of War detailed diatribe, I have a soft spot for it because you jump scared me with the surprise thesis of it, because I had no idea that was what you were going for when it was like, BT Dub's fate is generational trauma, and I was like, oh fuck, I'm reframing my thoughts as we speak.
It reorients the entire course of the game when you watch it through that lens.
No, it really makes a lot of sense. So I had a really good time just kind of being in the back seat, the audience surrogate for that one, that's half the fun of the detailed diatribe format. I think that one of us kind of gets to put our feet up and just be like, wow, that's so interesting. Ooh, tell me more. Like, and
Could that
it
be
makes it
fucked
work.
up or what?
Yeah. I'm here to ask follow-up questions, drink tea, and not contribute very much, which is always pleasant.
No, hardly. I think the reason the detailed diatribes work so well in previous years, and then especially the ones that we put out this year, because again, the ones we had this year were all so good, every single last one of them, was the benefit of being able to have both of us in the video. You know, when we started doing this, we were college students who couldn't really collaborate at a distance, so we had our own production pipelines. Red makes her myths, I make my history, we check over each other's scripts, but anything more complicated than that, like both doing voiceover work in a video, or like, you know, taking a topic from two angles and doing like a 1-2 punch, was functionally impossible to put together. So when we finally figured out this idea for a show of like, it's both of us together talking about stuff in a way that feels organic but also structured, and not just like we're sitting in a room talking about nothing for a while. That's what the After show is for.
Yeah.
That's what's so fun about that. Is it's just random whatever's happening is happening. But having the balance of free form and structure, and then both of us being together, is what I think makes them so, I don't want to say like electric, but so fun and so enjoyable to make and to watch back. And God of War was the first of many really good ones this year. And of course, the plot twist for the generational trauma was really fun. Again, it's like I'm putting it together in the slides, and I'm like, oh, I got it.
Yeah. No, it was definitely like a little electric moment of revelation on that one, which was a lot of fun. And it really ties the game together, I think, because without that sort of metaphorical or allegorical framing, you play the game and you're like, why is everyone so hung up on this fate thing? Like, the audience, I know theoretically, Ragnarok should happen and most of these guys should die, but like, why are the characters kicking up such a big fuss over it? And then it's like, it's because every time they say it's fate, what they're saying is, Dad, please stop drinking. So I get it. Okay, cool. I'm up to speed. Yeah.
But on the other side of videos, I really loved the personifying death trope talk, and I wanted to give some love to one of the non-myth videos that you did on the channel. I know you were thinking like, my favorite trope talks this year, Those Dang Phones is really good. I also like personifying death, and I was like, nah, it's got to be personifying death for me. Just seeing the emotional response that everybody had for that one was so deeply impactful to see. And I don't want to talk over you on this one because it's your video, but I really liked this one a lot.
Yeah, I'm glad. It was a bit of a delicate process to figure out how to frame it. And we talked about this in the podcast directly after it, because when I started writing up the script on this one, I was like, I gotta be careful, because this is a sore spot for absolutely everybody. Like, this is guaranteed to be something that has unpleasant implications or memories or whatever associated. And like, there are many ways I could frame this, but if I get too self-indulgent and don't think about how it's going to impact the audience, I could potentially do some damage. So I was trying, very carefully to sort of like make sure that I stayed within the boundaries of fiction, which is a big help right from the jump. It's like, this is a fictional ramification of death. This is a personification of him in this movie. Yeah. And now let's talk about how the message of that movie turns into something about running from death, perhaps not good so much, stuff like that. Yeah. And honestly, I was really glad that I could use an example like Puss in Boots: The Last Wish as a repeated, staple of the video, because it's a very beautiful movie, but it is very much like, this is for kids. Like, it's also for like me, but it's a movie about an anthropomorphic cat going on a fun adventure, but it's also about death. And I was just like, great, this is perfect, because now this means I'm not just doing like Twilight Zone episodes and Discworld. This is a reference that makes it clear that like, no, I'm drawing from multiple sources, and this one is really solid for this. Also, one of the more fun versions of Death, I think, because a lot of the time he kind of gets a little bit like Discworld Death. He's a very interesting character, but he's definitely more like moody. He's sometimes funny, but he's not so much fun. Whereas, the El Lobo from Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is just having a great goddamn time, and that's what makes him fun to watch. Yeah. It's just like, I hope he has a cool fight, and then they walk away with mutual respect. That's all I need out of this guy. I also got to use young hot Robert Redford Twilight Zone episode, which was pretty cool. So that was neat.
Yeah, I got jump scared by young hot Robert Redford in that one.
Yeah, well, that's what I like about the Twilight Zone. I'd say about a fifth of all the episodes, the twist is like, and that guy was death the whole time. But they're all like very different versions, which I think is cool. You got like The Hitchhiker, which is probably the other iconic Twilight Zone death episode, where it's just like this this shabby little gray man seems to be stalking this woman on her cross-country road trip, and it's just like, he's just there. Just, like, hey, you going my way? And it's like, I don't know, am I? Probably, eventually. And then you get young hot Robert Redford being like, come on, let me take me by the arm and walk you out like the classy dame you are. And it's like, oh, heck yeah. Sign me up.
Well, let's sign ourselves up to talk about some challenges that we've had this year. Gone right into our next category of the most challenging videos you guys made this year. So again, drum rolls all around.
This is so sad. Alexa, play Roman Empire 2. Oh, hell yeah.
But Enkidu and Gilgamesh managed to defeat it through the cunning strategy of hitting it really hard.
Never, for any reason, provoke your crusaders. They are armed, violent, and prone to fits of disproportionate holy rage.
Which means the number of unstoppably powerful demigods causing problems for innocent locals has changed from 1 to 2. Good work, team.
Red's most challenging video was Legend Summarized, the Epic of Gilgamesh, and Blue's was History Resummarized, the Byzantine Empire.
Want to start with Gilgamesh?
Yeah, sure. I had a really good time. It was, again, similar to the Nine Realms, like, I can, get in some of these illustrations, while I'm in transit, and I had the excuse that the Atrahasis section was, a kind of a storybook retelling, so drawing it in a different style made sense, which was really great.
It was gorgeous, too.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thanks. I had so much fun with it. I always like getting to reuse older designs I had for gods, so I got to go back to, the Underworld Myths video and be like, how did I design Ea? Oh, yeah, fish head. Sure, I'll do that.
I don't even remember.
Yeah, can't remember why. I think I probably saw, I'm sure I saw something that made me think, this makes sense and is a good idea, but maybe I just saw the hat shape and was like, I can make this work with fish. No, it was interesting. It definitely, in terms of the research process, it was probably a little bit less complicated because it was basically just what's a really good translation of Gilgamesh? Let's use that. Let's read through it, drop in my notes. I could even be like, this chapter isn't complete, so who knows what happened in it. But it was kind of just the heftiness of the length of it and how many frames there were and how complicated some of the visuals got, where I was like, this is a little bit much. This is taking me a little bit of a long time. But honestly, the Epic of Gilgamesh is such a good story. And I really liked that sort of the thread I hit on while I was working on it of this story is about immortality, but the reason we keep talking about it is because it is really about immortality. Yeah. And the meta-narrative around it supports that, and I thought that was really fun.
That's what I loved so much. Even if this video was just the introduction before you start telling the story, that first, page or so, 2-3 minutes, that alone was so good.
Thanks.
That it made the whole video afterwards just a bonus. That was already so compelling and sets up the rest of the thread for what makes the story so interesting so well. Great.
That's probably, in the long term, I actually think that video might be one of the ones I'm proudest of overall. I think it'll probably age pretty gracefully, and I hope people are still enjoying it in years to come. Because I had a good time with it, and tapping into that sort of chain of storytelling was despite being a goofy haha internet person, I did have kind of this little feeling of, something's going on here. It's a new incarnation of a very, very old story that only survives now because it keeps getting retold by people like me. So that was cool, and I had a good time with it.
Yeah. What was mine again? Byzantines, right.
Yes.
I was just thinking wistfully about the Epic of Gilgamesh. I got completely carted off to Mesopotamia. Peter
we've all
Pringle's
been there.
music playing in the background.
He's thinking about other women. Ziggurat picture. You were just Enkidu again.
He thinks about the Epic of Gilgamesh.
How many times does he think about Gilgamesh and Enkidu's epic
it's
traffic?
fucking disgusting. Full translation,
Smooching your
all
bro.
20 tablets. But I almost put in for this one being the kind of combo of the Great Ziggurat of Ur and the Fall of Babylon, because telling that story was really cool, and it was kind of like a soft re-summarized of my initial Mesopotamia video from 4 years ago, which was only fine. But I felt really good about the ones I was able to do kind of as a combo around the Gilgamesh video, Great Ziggurat of Ur, Fall of Babylon. I really liked that kind of summer of Gilgamesh that we had, Mesopotamia.
Hot Gilgamesh summer.
Yeah. Yeah. But for me, this was the most challenging video that I have done probably ever in terms of just raw hour investment was the Byzantines video, because at the beginning I told myself, like, I'm going to put everything that I have into this video. So
Yeah.
I had been working on like various drafts of it. As early as last year, I had taken some of the videos and kind of slapped them together, like, oh, I know I want to change this, I'll just do it now. Oh, I know I want to add this, I'll just do it now. So I already was like starting from a partial script when I started my kind of like 2-week allotment for the video. But I was talking to some great friends and fellow Romaboo brain rot people in the Discord who were able to point me towards, like, you might want to talk about this, you might want to talk about this. So I kind of told myself, like, I'm just going to include everything I think I can include without completely ruining the pacing. However much work that is, I don't care. So I ended up writing a fourth regular video's worth of extra stuff spread across the part 1, 2, 3 for the script. And then, of course, I had to make all those images, all the maps, get all the visuals, get everything, and then edit them together for that 45-minute video. Just the singular effort investment of that was so big. I was pulling like 10 or 11 hour days a lot in that stretch to get it done, and I could, because I was just so enthused about it. I was just like working through it, and I was like dead tired afterwards, but it was the most laborious video to produce that I'd ever done. But just because I was so jazzed about it, like, I was able to work for such a long span of time without, like, normally I take breaks. I was like, no, we're doing this, we're in it.
Yeah. I think when you were going through it, I remember messaging something like, it's weird seeing this from the outside. Because that's normally not at all your work ethic. Normally you are very good about, like, I'm going to do it for these many hours in the day. I'm going to note down my breaks, and then I'm going to stop, and then I'm going to do something else, and then I'm going to go to bed. And I was like, cool. It's 3 a.m. because I had another idea, so it's time for more ideas. So it was very interesting seeing the bug bite you on that one, and the video that came out was really good. So, you know.
Yeah. Like, Cyan's out of town this weekend. I can work 10 hours on Saturday and
well,
Sunday
shit,
each.
there goes my impulse control.
Yeah, basically. It's like, oh, this is what I used to be like. Got it.
The college days.
Yeah. No, it was really rewarding to put that together. I mean, obviously, that it went into the labor of the big Rome video. And that in itself was also a lot of work, but differently so. This one was just like front to back constructing a truly massive video in 2 weeks, more or less from scratch. I had, a script, but I added a regular video length's worth of script. There was 10 minutes of brand new stuff in there. So it was a lot, but it was really fun. So challenging, directly proportional to rewarding, as opposed to sometimes where it's like, this is challenging and it just feels like it kicked my ass. No, this is great.
I'm
This is
great,
amazing.
but yeah.
This category's had a lot of fun entries in the past. It's nice to see it be videos that you guys are happy with at the end of the challenge, in addition to being a stressor in your life. But when you're stressed, sometimes you should take a nap. And for this final category, Red and Blue have requested we talk about y'all sleepin', the stuff that you guys slept on this year.
I forgot where we were going with that.
I came up with the idea for this category in like a flash of light, and I was like, Red!
I've got it! Yes.
Videos that maybe we think should have gotten more attention, so if we could get a little attention to the final drum roll of the episode.
Here's a rhetorical question that's way too existential for the first 5 seconds of a YouTube video. Why do we want things to look nice?
The depths do it a little bit, but the depths don't feel empty. They feel terrifying.
His newspaper just celebrated its 75th anniversary and was bigger than ever. The 20s were a-roarin', and the city just gave him 120 vertical meters to play.
You are fighting a god, and you need help. And that's great, and I love it. And there is only one part of the game where that's not how it feels. And that's what this slideshow is about.
This year, y'all slept on the detailed diatribe for Tears of the Kingdom's Lonely Sky and the History Summarized Tribune Tower videos.
I don't want to make this sound accusatory. It's like, you didn't watch the videos enough. No.
Then you shouldn't have named the category y'all sleep.
No, but it's funny. It
is very funny. It's true. Yeah.
I do not fault y'alls for sleeping, but y'alls were... No. What I wanted to do with this category was to take videos that we felt were like a little mismatched to how much we enjoyed making them to how big of a splash they made. And a lot of times it's like, oh, this video didn't do gangbusters numbers, but everyone who watched it liked it, and that's always very rewarding, and that's pretty much always the case. If there's a video that doesn't do as well, everyone who watched it still liked it, and that keeps us satisfied. But for this one, it was like, what's a video that we feel like if you want to go back and check out one that you haven't seen, where might we recommend you start? And that's with these two.
I like it. And the length disparity between them is great, because my Lonely Sky thing is like 2 hours, and the Tribune Tower is like, what, bite size? Like 10?
It's like 8-9 minutes, yeah.
Yeah. So, if you want to burn a feature-length movie, the Detailed Diatribe is there waiting. But I think like the main thing about this category is it's stuff that we were really enthused about and we had a really like good time talking about, and then it just like the curves up here and we're like because that's what happened with mine. For the folks at home just listening and not watching, you're just gonna have to imagine that what I just said made perfect sense. But the Tears of the Kingdom Detailed Diatribe was definitely one for me, because I was like, I've cracked it, this is so good. And like I had a really good time, and I am glad, because everyone who watched it, who commented, was like, this is fun. Or like, oh, it's kind of nice to see you guys like this game, because a lot of people talking about this game are just complaining about this thing that you're talking about. So that I didn't know about, but that was kind of cool. But I was not really expecting it to be such a low performer, because it's like, this is like one of the games of the year, and like we've been streaming it a lot. I don't know. But again, like this is absolutely not at all like blaming anybody. The people who watched it seem to like it, but also like it's 2 hours. I'm not going to strap anybody down and be like, you have to watch this and tell me you think it's good. Exactly. Like, do your own thing. But I had a good time. So when you were like the y'all sleeping category, I was like, probably this one, because it was less viewed than I expected it to be, but people still seem to like it, so that's good. And
I realized, like, as funny as I think the y'all sleeping title is, I don't want this to be accusatory.
Sometimes you make the joke and then you're like, shit. The consequences.
For this one, it's not that the Tribune Tower video did like especially poorly. It's had a lot of time, because it was one of my first videos of the year, so it's had time to kind of like come up to. It's still well under the curve, but it's okay. But what I really liked about this one was, this was one of the first videos where I feel like I was able to just kind of talk about a thing and construct my own narrative that's like divorced from what you would see in like, a textbook or like a typical, lesson plan of something. So it's like when I'm talking about Rome or the Byzantines, it's like we're going strictly chronological. We're telling the story in kind of one of the only orders you would tell it in. But for me, what I liked about this was kind of constructing like the idea of like, why do we build things that are beautiful? What is so interesting about old architecture? What was the pursuit of greater like height in buildings? Like, how did that turn into the skyscraper race? And then, leading all to the Tribune Tower in Chicago, the most beautiful, modern office building in the world, and then why, and just weaving that. I think it's
apartments now. I think we looked into this.
It's apartments now, but when it was constructed, it was for the most beautiful office building in the world. But being able to like weave a very like atypical narrative leading to this building, kind of framing the Chicago Tribune Tower as the keystone accomplishment of the great skyscraper race. Fuck you, New York. No. New York has beautiful archture. The Singer
I don't want to offend anybody
fantastic.
In this y'all sleeping category, but also New York can go fuck itself. Second city, my ass. If your pizza's so good, why do you only get it in New York? Taking some of the heat off of you.
Okay, thank you. But I liked what this video was able to do for me, because it kind of unshackled me from like traditional narratives of like, I have to kind of like tell this story in order. It's like, no, I can just talk about whatever the hell I want. If I want to talk about this thing, I can just talk about that. And the Tribune Tower video was kind of breaking the seal of the first time that I really did that, where it's not just the Tribune Tower, it's a lot of other stuff too, and weaving that together in a way that still worked was for me the moment where I'm like, oh, I can do more than just like point A, point B, linear narrative history. And I think it turned out really well. So it's not that it got a terrible viewership or anything, but it was it had a huge positive impact on my video making, but itself was not as like widely viewed as the impact it had later on. It's a real Eliel Saarinen second place design kind of video.
Oh man,
it's a joke for people who watch the video.
No, it was really interesting. I mean, just the basic question of like, what was it like the first time people started engineering buildings that go up that much? It was like, oh yeah, because we live
gravity.
in
Wind.
well, gravity, wind, material sciences. I mean, like we lived in big cities most of our lives, so I think for us it's like skyscrapers just happen most of the time. You're not complaining about, you're not like thinking about why and how they're so tall. You're just like, oh, that one's ugly, or like breaks up the skyline. But then it's like, hey, if you're only like, if the tallest building you've ever seen is like a church spire, how do you build something 100 feet? Sorry, like 300 feet. I keep forgetting. Like 300 stories, let's say. Even bigger. I don't think 300 stories can happen.
No.
You can clearly tell that I am not the architecture or the history person on this. But like, when you want to build a tall building, how do you make a short building tall? How do you expand out that design language? And that was a question it never occurred to me to ask because I don't tend to think about buildings all that much. But yeah, I think like both in terms of the change of perspective that making the video had for you and the change of perspective that asking the question of the video had on me, I think it was a very impactful little chestnut for what we did this year. Yeah.
And I credit to the city of Philadelphia. When I was there for PAX, I had the thought of like, why do I like old buildings so much? It's a style agnostic question. It's not like there's one school of design that I like more, but it's and this relates to the video, but the idea that like someone created something to be beautiful, and then an invisible string of many someones worked together over years and years, centuries even, to preserve it because they thought it was worth something. You can build beautiful things now and they're still very beautiful, but the idea of something that is old and perseveres and is still beautiful is so much more impactful because of all the effort that went into not just making it, but keeping it. And that really hits for the Tribune Tower for me whenever I see it.
That's really beautiful. I like it a lot.
Yeah. And also, fuck New York. No,
Hey!
I think I was going to say it's a lovely sentiment to end this portion of the podcast on. But, I think it's best if we just jump into the Q&A and see if this energy continues.
Yay!
Cut to the Q&A. It's just Red and Indigo. I'm
We've killed him.
yeah.
2023.
A single New York dollar slice in my chair.
He's been pizza-fied. Oh no!
Pizza rack got him. Hello and welcome to the Q&A portion of the Overly Sarcastic podcast, where we answer your questions from Ask OS Pod on Discord. This first question is brought to you by one of our lovely, lovely patrons. If you'd like to be a supporter of the channel, a supporter of the podcast, consider becoming a patron for a chance to have your question read first in a future episode. This question comes from What is a Fish? To all, if you had to relive a single day in your life in a Groundhog's Day style time loop, what day would you choose and what shenanigans would you get up to? And what would finally break you from the loop? So you have to choose one day of your life to Groundhog's Day. See what happens in it. What are you getting up to? These are the questions you ask that we ask.
This is a complicated one because I think fundamentally the concept of a time loop is so overwhelmingly horrifying to me that I think, but also like storytelling wise, you don't get a good story out of doing something that the main character wants to have happen. Like if we pick like a relatively inoffensive or chill day, like any of my work days or something like that, admittedly that becomes a Sisyphusian nightmare very quickly. It's like, oh cool, I can never get absolutely anything done because anything I do gets undone at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But like just a chill like indoor day, I probably wouldn't even notice it was a time loop for a while, you know? But who wants to watch that fucking movie?
Yeah.
Whereas meanwhile, like you pick a day where like anything momentous happens, like, oh, it's graduation day, or like, oh, it's, it's this day that we had this cool party, or like a day that I got to like hang out with people I liked. I think that anything becomes a prison if you can't leave. So, that's like setting your favorite song as your ringtone. Like you're gonna start hating it, or like your alarm song, obviously. Like, there's no good answer, because if it's a good day, no, it's not. And if it's a bad day, oh, cool, actual hell. So I choose not to participate. I'm not going to pick a day. It's going to be one of the days where I was inside watching TV. I can do that forever and probably not even notice that it was a Groundhog Day loop until I was like, have I not aged in a while?
Yeah.
It's like,
I feel like the sentimental answer is to pick a day that like meant something to you. Like I'm like, oh, like an early date with my boyfriend, or like a really sweet childhood memory or something. Like that's a day that'd be fun to repeat for to a point.
A couple times, yeah.
It's still, but like to capture that like feeling of like, oh, this was important to me, and maybe I want to relive this. But I do think like the funniest option is a day where just like everything that went wrong, and you have to progressively get better at fixing it before you can break out of the loop. You know, like
Yeah.
I like it, like a roguelike strategy.
Yeah.
Like you just
Like,
have to, yeah.
as an ex-theater kid, I did high school stage crew, and we had one show
That would
where
do
like
it.
everything that went wrong could have gone wrong. And I think that there is humor in having to do that show over and over again. Like, okay, this time I've reinforced the doors so they're not going to fall off the set when that one actor walks through it, and I've added a heavier, bigger lid onto the container of dry ice so it doesn't go flying across the stage when one guy bursts through the door. And like, I know that one guy's going to call out sick, so we've brought in a replacement, and just like having to fix the things. But then of course things will continue to go wrong, and so you end up in this perpetual Sisyphusian
new
loop
problems.
of
Yeah, this
new
is your Edge of
problems in
Tomorrow.
theater. Yes,
Exactly.
exactly.
It's a good
exactly.
movie.
It's
a really
the
good
theater
Take your word
kids'
for it.
Edge of Tomorrow.
movie. Yeah.
Oh man.
In rejecting the premise of the question and not basically subjecting myself to hell, I'll change the premise so that it's me and one other person are in the time loop. So what I would do is I would go back to Italy with Cyan when we took our like post honeymoon trip, and we just like be in like Florence or Venice for a day, and the goal is that we only get out once we hit all the museums.
Oh, I
That's
love
just a
that.
fun time.
You're sort
Fuck
of
the
doing,
premise of this question. I'm gonna have fun.
Wait, 100% completion this shit.
Yeah.
You're sort of doing the ending of Futurama where Fry and Leela are in a world frozen and like get to just go and do all of the cool things that they've ever wanted
Yeah.
to. Like that's a good way to use a Groundhog Day if you're stuck in one.
Yeah. Gonna hit the museums. I'm gonna just like make a bunch of video scripts on a flash drive that I can take with me, and then eventually I'll just come back and be like, look at all these scripts. Look at all the stuff I got.
Are you
Amazing.
implying that the flash drive doesn't reset at the end of the time loop when you
That's
wake up
true.
in the morning?
I put it in my pocket, so it's part of like the unit of me that.
I don't
Fuck the
think
premise
that's
of the question.
Yeah.
I can take a flash drive.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I feel like the only thing that you can guarantee that you take through into the next loop is your own knowledge of what's going on. At least in the traditional Groundhog Day setup. I watched a rather harrowing episode of Star Trek where the protagonists figure out that they're stuck in a time loop because the Enterprise keeps exploding at the end of every day, and they're slowly like deja vuing their way through. Anyway, good episode, but it was kind of harrowing. As they're like, how many times have we done this? How long have we been stuck in the loop? Oh no. So if we're assuming that the only thing you can take through is your own knowledge, really the only kind of like progress you can make in a time loop is learning new things.
Which is also fine.
Right, but it's like, okay, so my couch day where I'm just steadily making my way through like a TV show, or like I spend one day and I just get every book out of a library I can find and I just start like reading through it and stuff like that. Like that's practically speaking the only thing you can get out of a time loop scenario. So I think my couch day plan works great, to be completely honest. But
Fine,
I
forget
think
the
that,
flash drive. I'll just learn everything about Florence.
yeah, you just memorize them. You know, you enter your mind
Yeah.
palace.
Well, this next question comes from Tango Rex to Red. I just started reading Aurora, and I was wondering if any of the work on your trope talks helped with the plotting of the story. If so, which ones helped the most and why? And as an aside, Kendall is awesome. I love the floofy dork so much. Excuse me. You
you
just
gotta
wrapped up
pronounce it
Arc
right.
1 of Aurora. Super
did.
cool. And yeah, neat stuff. Answer
Yeah,
the question,
yeah.
I guess.
It's
And I've now
okay,
read through half of it as of yesterday.
Ah, sweet. Fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's more like the trope talks and the comic kind of come from the same place in my head, where the crucible, where I melt down everything I've ever watched and read and try to figure out how they worked, so I can forge something new from whatever my brain does with it. There's a metaphor here. It's doing something,
It's fine.
largely without my consent at this point. But yeah, I'm trying to. I think the one where there was the closest parallel running between them, and I don't want to get too specific because it sounds like this person just started reading it,
This question may
and
have
someone
been
else
from a
on this
while
call
ago.
also just Well, okay. Well, I still don't want to spoil too much of it because Blue just started getting through like half of it. Anyway, it was the trope talk on character development comas,
Okay.
where I was simultaneously writing the script and working out how I was going to be doing this in the story, like at the same time. So as I was writing through, like, this version does this and has these benefits, or like, but also this is kind of a shortcut to characterization, and sometimes you need to do other things after the fact to shore up the characterization so that it's not just like, I went to sleep and all my problems got solved, like stuff like that. And it was funny because at the time that the video came out, like the thing that I had been writing alongside of it had already, been posted partially. But a lot of people in the comments were like, hey, wait a second, this smells familiar.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that one was probably the one where it was most directly applicable to what I was currently working on at the time of the scripting and at least like the line art and coloring process. But yeah, for the most part, I never really write a trope talk setting out to unravel something that'll be useful for Aurora. It's mostly like my writer brain and my unpacking other people's writing brain is one brain. The Venn diagram is a circle. So yeah, that's about it.
That's fair.
Excellent. Well, this next question comes from insert cool name here to Blue and others if they want to chime in. If you could sit down and talk to any one of the history makers you've mentioned in your videos without a language barrier, which one would you choose?
Probably, history maker specifically is a good way to narrow it down. I would either talk to Machiavelli and ask him to just tell me about republics and just like watch the fireworks go off, or I would talk to Plato and see how long I can go without strangling him. Plato's less of a shit than Socrates was.
Aristotle.
But, he would still... Aristotle I would just like slap as soon as I sat down at the table. Like, that's for the teeth thing, you dumbass.
You didn't even check. Tell me you've never looked at a woman without telling me you've never looked at a woman. Anyway.
I feel like it'd be fun to sit down with Anna Komnena, even though I could never pronounce her name perfectly when I was doing that video, just because we love a girl boss,
Yeah.
Right. Sappho's free.
Yeah.
All right.
Because
we love a girl boss.
There are a lot of really good people on that list to talk to, and just because I have my my Florence and Athens bias, they're like... Anna Komnene would be amazing. Sappho would be super fun to talk to. It's like, tell me any of your poems.
It's really just you putting
together
your like dream dinner party rotation is what's happening. Like this is the
my brain
ideal holiday group.
Basically, all the history makers in a room.
Sweet mother, I cannot weave. Slender Aphrodite has stricken me with love for a girl boss. Anyway.
Well, this next question comes from Lord Von Brie. To all, now that the year is coming to a close and Magenta's been pitching all those tasty indie TTRPGs roughly half a year back at you, did you try any of them? And if not, are you planning to? So try any new TTRPGs this year?
I have not yet had the chance to, in large part because most of our TTRPG time has been taken up by doing rolling with difficulty and ancillary rolling with difficulty things.
Yeah. Group dynamics have not been conducive to trying those ones out, but I really want to play... what was
Spirits?
The Dark Souls-y one? Yeah, Bleak Spirits. I really want to try that one a lot.
Yeah, we actually got sent the source stuff for Lovecraft-esque, which Bleak Spirits is a hack of. So if we wanted to try that out, we can.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I think the short answer is none of us have played as many TTRPGs as we would like to, but certainly we intended to in the new year. So this is more of
Magenta can fight me about that whenever she wants, but...
a New Year's resolution, play more games with friends. I would like to game more. In 2024.
Yeah.
But speaking of the year behind us, this next question comes from a carpenter to all. Since the year is coming to a close, what's the coolest or your favorite thing that you did this year?
Ooh, it's got to be one of the traveling things because this year was bananas for travel. I actually, at present, I'm wearing all of the bracelets I got from my various travels. That became my thing, which is why my left arm is significantly heavier than my right today. But
you can take them off in a dramatic moment of the fight scene and then start punching faster.
Yeah, I drop it and it just leaves a crater. These training weights were holding me back. Yeah, I mean, for me, when we got to see just a little bit of Aurora Borealis in Iceland, that was probably like top 10 for me because like that's been
saw a little bit of the Aurora Borealis in Iceland.
Yes, well, some of us still need to go back and try again and get the full spectacular
Some of us
Aurora.
had a perfect view from their plane on the ride in.
Yep.
Who is she?
I wonder who that could be. But no, that was pretty top tier stuff.
That was pretty great.
And overall, just the amount of like just bouncing around we were doing, especially in the first half of the year, because we went down to New Zealand and we didn't do anything like groundbreaking, but I got to do some pretty cool tourism stuff before the rest of the gang rocked up. And I think on the same level as getting to see the Aurora Borealis in Iceland was getting to see the Waitomo glowworm caves, which was extremely cool. And the specific like way in which that day played out for me, it was sort of a twofer. Because I asked Tim before we rocked up for his wedding, like, hey, what tourism should I do in Auckland? And he was like, I don't know, I've been like once. And I was like, come on, man. So he's like, okay,
North
well,
Island.
yeah. So he was like, okay, well, they've got the Hobbiton set tour and they've got the Waitomo Glowworm Caves, and those are the two things you should check out. And I was like, great. And I looked into it, and there was basically a bus route that just took you to both of those places over the course of the day.
Yeah.
And that was my like one thing. So we went to I think we did Hobbiton first and then the Glowworm Caves, but I don't specifically remember the order of operations. But the Hobbiton set tour was very fun, extremely kitschy, and also I think kind of purposefully a little bit like, it's a movie set. It's not a theme park. It's not Disney. You go there and you like they're like, look at the forced perspective to make it look better on camera. Now that you've gotten your Lord of the Rings fix, how about you go and tour the rest of New Zealand? You a bunch of fucking Yanks. I don't know. Could be fun. But like it's honestly kind of brilliant because the tour bus they have like this Peter Jackson, like, welcome, movie set, clips from the movies, et cetera, et cetera. And then when you're leaving, they play you a bunch of montages of people leaving the Shire and then seeing the other spectacular vistas that were filmed in New Zealand, which is a genius way of being like, all right, now that you've scratched that itch and eaten at the little, like, bakery that we have at the halfway point, go and actually put some money into the economy where it's supposed to go, which I thought was pretty fun. And then the flip side, the Waitomo Glowworm Caves, it's a completely natural environment. It is still being like curated and like tour guided by the descendants of the guys that found it in the first place in the 1800s. They take extreme care with it to like they monitor everything in there, like the humidity, the CO2 levels, stuff like that, because it's a very delicate environment. And you are not allowed to take photos beyond a certain point because glowworms are agitated by light. So like the final part of the trip through the caves, they basically take you through this little like switchback little river mouth thing that is completely dark because of the way the light bounces. And it is just, the ceiling is carpeted in these little glowing points of blue light. And you've seen a few of them through the caves on the way down, but they mostly don't hang out anywhere where there's enough light to see, because the way they hunt is they look like a way out of the darkness. Yeah. And you're just looking at that and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not allowed to take out my phone and take any pictures because the light from my screen, this is pitch black. Like, you'd be able to tell. And going from the most artificial, like, curated tourism to this actual natural wonder that feels like something that belongs in a fantasy world was a very impactful moment, I think, that I thought was very cool. So if you get a chance, I would recommend it. I'm probably not going back anytime soon because, oh boy, that trip was a hefty boy. But
it was a lot. Yeah.
It was a lot, but it was so worth it.
Yeah, no, it was really nice to be able to do that. Travel was a lot this year. I did a lot, arguably too much.
You did like twice as much as me.
Yeah. Well, since I'm here, a dangerous impulse.
Yeah, you just sunk cost fallacied your way around the world at one point.
Yeah. I had to go to Greece for some family timing stuff, but I was able to make kind of like a bigger trip out of it and see parts of Greece that I'd never seen before, which was really, really cool. Got to see like Mycenae and Nafplio and other places. Got to go to an island, like not one of the two islands I'd spent like 5 minutes on each, but like an island with like famous stuff on it. It's like, cool, great. But that was really neat. Iceland was a blast. Being able to do that with the whole gang was really, really rewarding and fun.
Yeah.
Going to Thorsmork National Park with the people from Midgard Adventure who organized the trip and where we stayed, where it's like this guy's like family owned it way back when, before they like sold it to the National Park Service or whatever. That was really cool, going around in the Jeep and all that stuff. But then also going to New Zealand, going then the rest of the way across to Britain to go see some family friends in Wales, and going down with my dad to Malta. He had to leave early. He got a little sick. But I was able to stay through the rest of the trip and then coming back and circumnavigating the world. Not
Super
something
cash.
I think I'm ever going to do again. But it was pretty damn cool to have done it this time. And man, like every place was so cool, but Malta was a real treat. That was a surprise that I deeply enjoyed going to. And then again, all these travel things turned into fun videos that I was really proud of over this year. Except New Zealand, that's coming 2024. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, like the travel. The only travel I really did outside of the country or outside of like a weekend trip somewhere was Iceland, which was extremely cool for me because, other than to visit family or to study abroad. I've never left the country like on a trip for fun with no other intent purpose behind it. And so like that was its own kind of rewarding experience. But I think my favorite thing I did this year was like really dove into the convention scene, and in particular got to kind of very last minute talk on the NPC lab with Join the Party at PAX Unplugged, and like
That was really cool.
really rewarding to just sort of get to like kind of be in my field for a bit and get to meet some people in person, and just really a fantastic experience. You know, not every convention is the same, but it was still really rewarding to kind of get to see what the scene is like, because I did not grow up going to conventions at all. Like, this is all very new for me. I have only ever approached it as a person working in industries adjacent to them. So like, this is all new territory for me. It's exciting to see where it might go. Ziggy just got fed by the automatic feeder and then came into the room screaming. So, hey Ziggs, how you doing? You want to?
It was a really good panel, I should say. It was very, very funny.
Yeah, I'm sorry I missed it, but it's great for me too to see everybody start coming into the convention circuit, because I did grow up going through it, and while this does mean that for me a lot of the time it's like, all right, I've done my time at the con, I'm gonna go back to the hotel and hang out and eat room service for a while. But like, it's very cool to see other people experiencing it for the first time and get to sort of have that like fresh eyes experience.
Yeah,
it's neat. Well, this next question comes from Biakuz. I just re-listened to the full Ozpod catalog, and I'm loving all of the bits just as much, if not more, now that I can see their evolution. What is your favorite bit?
Red's drink order is
pretty
the
good.
big one now.
My drink order is pretty fun, especially because it's been encouraging me to mix it up, because I don't want to just be like, it's another copycat frap, because now I'm like, well, maybe we can be a little more creative with it. I don't know.
Yeah, I gotta give an honorable mention to probably our longest running bit, Red not knowing what the outro for this podcast is, despite it going for nearly 2 years.
I know the general gist, but sometimes there's special information that I need to add in that nobody warns me about.
I feel like she gets it pretty well each time.
She's kind of got the main bit down.
What is she missing? What is Red missing from the outro?
The consistent structure of the script that was originally written in the same way that it opens. It's not an important thing. It's funnier that it's not consistent. Like there is a script somewhere at some point that got sent.
Ah, well.
Yeah.
I mean, you turn me loose for an hour of unscripted, content, and then it's like, hey, by the way, I need you to snap your brain into script reading mode and figure out how we're gonna wrap this baby up. Come on, man.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I can do the intro because that's like a sentence and a half. And even then, I don't always get it consistent.
It's the planting, and then we pay it off. You know how it is.
I'm not saying that the original outro was also just a sentence and a half, but it also was a sentence and a half. It's the same,
there's
they're
always
the
more
same
shit
length.
then. It's like, oh, thank you all so much for listening. We'll be back another 2 weeks with another exciting episode of the Sarcastic podcast. And then it's like, oh, also, we have the ass now. You should come to Patreon and listen to the ass, because we're going to hang out for another 30 minutes. And maybe we have like announcements that we did at the midpoint that we need to reiterate at the end. And until next time, like, I know the shape of it, but come on.
It's our recurring segment.
True.
This next question comes from Seven Catwitch. To Blue, once upon a previous Ozpod episode, you described yourself and Red as analogous to Merry and Pippin from Lord of the Rings. So which one of you is who? Like, who's who of those two? And who do Indigo and Cyan scan to in the Fellowship?
Oh no!
I don't know these characters well enough to make those
We'll open this one up to the floor, I feel like.
Well, they start off as kind of just those two guys. In the book, they are a little bit more put together. Pippin is the younger one and generally considered a bit of a dumb fuck. But they also go through this like growth over the course of the story. Merry is like only serious by comparison to Pippin, but over the course of the story, they both sort of enlist in completely different like forces of good, armies and stuff. And Pippin goes through it in Gondor, whereas Merry is dealing with the riders of Rohan the whole time. And they kind of come back. They've also had some Ent draft, so now they're both tall and like buff by Hobbit standards. And they come back for the Scouring of the Shire. Also didn't make it into the movies. And basically they go on to just be like cool badasses who are best friends with High King Aragorn for the rest of their lives, pretty much. But in the context of the movies, they are those two idiots. So I guess which of us would knock over an entire dwarf skeleton in full plate and trigger a goblin ambush? Were we exploring the mines of Moria together? And I unfortunately already think I know the answer.
Well, there you have it, folks.
Right.
As for the rest of the Fellowship, not a fucking clue. I feel like Cyan would slot neatly into the Legolas.
I was gonna say,
place because she lives for the Ranger class.
Mm-hmm. She's got that elven archer vibe, and that sort of like, I don't tend to participate in what's going on, but when I do, I'm better at it than all of you. It's big Legolas energy.
I'm very tired. I don't really know who in the Fellowship that would be.
That's
like
Aragorn or Boromir. Token sensible guy needs a nap.
Just so tired all
Or
the time.
Frodo. Could also be Frodo. That's kind of his whole thing after a certain point.
Yeah.
It's done.
Yeah.
You know.
I'm very tired and I would like someone to carry me home, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
you go.
cool. We got it. We got it. With three hobbits and Legolas.
3 hobbits and Legolas. Possibly the funniest combination.
True chaos. It's one of them, the saddest hobbit in the world, and then 2 goobers, and like this guy who barely even exists on the same plane of existence as everybody else. Oh, God.
Excellent. Well, this question comes from Mr. Nixon, the Tolkien Straight. To all, I have my first international
That name
week-long
was a journey.
vacation coming up next year. How do y'all make sure to pack light? What are your essentials, and what do you never bring? I wanted to say this question because, Red, you are the master of packing light. Truly, I've never
One
seen someone
backpack
sustain
only.
themselves out of one backpack so successfully as you do.
I've only ever had to bring more than one bag, like, once, and that was because I was bringing Ren Fair boots, and those don't compress.
No.
But, the one backpack strat. 1 week is kind of the upper limit for how long you can manage the one backpack strat. And a lot of it is built on the fact that, like, jeans you can rewear several times before it becomes a problem. Like, if you don't get them muddy, they're basically going to be fine. So, like, 2 or 3 pairs of jeans will do you. And if you're wearing one of them, that's already space out of the backpack. Shirts, especially light ones, can compress very, very small. Socks and underwear, same deal. So you basically have your clothing requirements set up pretty quickly. Depending on your various, like, toiletries needs, that can go... That's usually probably the single thing that takes up the most space in my backpack, just like a little, like, zippered tiny suitcase, basically, of toiletries and stuff like that. But outside of that, there's not a whole lot else that, you know, really needs packing aside from, like, electronics, chargers for things, stuff like that. If you're doing, like, a full camping trip, there's only so small your equipment needs can really be.
Yeah.
But if it's just international travel where you're going to be, like, staying in a hotel... as long as you're, like, wearing the shoes that you're going to bring, there's very little else that you really need to, you know, take up space in the backpack with. In terms of things that, like, I never bring, I think, like, second pair of shoes, that's something that I could pack, but I just don't because it would take up a tremendous amount of backpack space. It would be heavy comparatively to everything else. I know a lot of people will do, like, the neck pillow thing. It's not something I really worry about. I'll usually try to basically wear whatever cold weather gear I need to bring because it also
that was
gets...
really the strat because you could just wear all the heavy stuff to Iceland.
Yeah, which was a bit of a gamble because we left in the winter. It was like, I'm going to be wearing this anyway, so it's fine. Because, again, like, anything that you will need to wear every day that you're not wearing the day you leave kind of becomes dead space. So... in general, like, minimal extras, which is something that I think you can kind of get away with if, in an emergency, you could, like, buy a second one if you need to, because it's often a bit of a gamble. It's not always, oh, good, 2 cats in frame. This is great. But
We got the top of one and the bottom of the other.
perfect. All right, stack them
Evenly
together.
balanced.
Just arrange the videos. Anyway, I don't know. I know a lot of people pack very heavy. But also it's like, oh, if you're going to a thing where you're likely to have, like, one fancy dinner where you need to dress up nicer, that's not a consideration I generally need to worry about. And honestly, this is probably the fanciest shirt I own, so it's not really a thing I do anyway.
The log line for this episode, the to-do list did say dress fancy, if possible.
Yeah.
And we're all our versions of fancy, and that's just fine.
This is twice as many bracelets as I normally have, and I'm wearing my nicest ace ring.
I didn't say it was a bad thing. I said we're all our version of fancy, and that's just fine.
Yeah, see? Anyway, yeah, I mean, there's probably other stuff I could think of to add, but like the specifics of like what not to pack isn't something I generally think about. There's kind of like a bare minimum of, stuff you need. But also a lot of hotels these days will like provide you with things like shampoo and conditioner and various other things. So a lot of the things that take up the most space, you just kind of don't need to bring your own if you need to. But again, that depends on where you're going and for how long and stuff like that. But yeah, you can usually pull off the one backpack strat in my experience. And it's very convenient because then you never need to worry about checked luggage or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing I run into with, again, very rarely have I traveled internationally, but it is nice if you are the kind of person who, like me, doesn't travel very often, might want to pick up a souvenir or something while you're traveling. Yeah. That is the only instance in where a checked bag for me is like, gotta do this, because what if I want to buy like a nice bottle of wine or something? The last week that we were in China for study abroad, everyone was ordering the cheapest extra suitcase they could find off of like Alibaba. Just like we need to get luggage now.
Yeah.
But yeah, pack what you think you'll need. If you don't think you're gonna have a fancy outfit, you don't need to bring a fancy outfit. But if you think you want to dress up a little nice, then account for that in your storage space. Is kind of the advice. Know yourself and how you like to be on vacation.
One useful thing that I started bringing along just in case, because I had one day where I was like out in the rain and it didn't bother me. But then after the fact, I was like, oh, these clothes are much less re-wearable now because they were damp and they haven't been washed. And weirdly, that has an impact. So I got these little packets of basically just like clothing detergent for washing stuff in sinks. And I've used them only twice, but it's very useful to have. Like if you get caught in a storm or you get splashed by a car and you were like, I don't want to like figure out a local laundromat and find out a place I can get quarters or whatever. I just want this clean. You can, wash something in a hotel sink, hang it up to dry, and you'll be fine.
Caught out in an Icelandic rainstorm maybe once or twice.
Yeah, or you happen to fall in the general area of like a cliff or something. It's just there's a lot of things that can happen when you're traveling. So
always be prepared. We got time, I think, for one last question here before we wrap up. So this one comes from Zarvius. To all, if you were added to a video game as an NPC, what game would it be and what purpose would you serve? Are you a boss, quest giver, shopkeeper, random voice line, etc.? So put yourself into a game as an NPC and tell me what you're doing.
Because we've had like a version of this where it's like, what kind of boss are we in a game and what loot do we drop? That was a very fun question with some great fan art that came out of it too.
Yeah, true, yeah.
Yes.
But if we can be anything, like quest givers,
you just can't be a player
merchants.
character.
Yeah.
So I guess that means we also couldn't be like added to the party in like a JRPG style kind of thing. So
exactly.
I think quest giver or boss fight are the two winning options for this one. Because quest giver can be fun because those guys can turn up at unexpected moments to help out or whatever, or secretly betray the players, 50-50.
Well, since we've already done boss fights, let's think about as quest givers what we would be and what kind of game we would slot into.
Everyone can also have different answers, so if you're not feeling quest giver at all, you're welcome to be any other kind of NPC.
Eating tape.
Oh, Cleo. Ziggy's abandoned me for clothes pile on the floor. Not to out myself as having just done my laundry and not putting it away, but
oh, clean clothes pile, even better.
Yeah.
Oh man. I think that I would do like JRPG adventure style quest giver person, like a little like 8-bit. Like I've been watching a lot of the New Frame Plus animations of Final Fantasy videos recently. My only real exposure to Final Fantasy, besides that one time I watched Advent Children and understood none of it. So it's cool kind of just seeing like the oldest, chunkiest graphics of like the little 8-bit sprite ones. I simply think that could be cute and fun. And I think I would want to just be like a friendly and helpful ally who maybe turns up at like an unexpected third act twist to help out in a boss fight. Not like secretly I have been conniving and will slay you all kind of thing, because that's a little bit of like an unfun. I don't know. Usually, it's a twist betrayer and then we're just going to kill him and move on. It's like, no. If I'm a quest giver and I, for instance, die heroically saving all of you, you'll remember me.
I would like to be one of those NPCs that has like, their shop or whatever, but they're the ones who it's like, yes, I see you found something feather. Come back when you have 6,000 of these. Where it's like whatever the 100% like completion percentage like collectible item is. I give you like the cool, like the new like sword or like some like palette swap outfit or something. Like I'm the guy who gives you like the okay, you completed the whole game, you turned in all the items, all the feathers or whatever. Here's your new cape or whatever the hell it is. I'd like to do that.
Yeah, I think I'd want to be in sort of a similar vein, because there's a lot of, in Skyrim in particular, like characters that are just there to flesh out the membership of a given guild. Like I'm in the Thieves Guild, but I'm not relevant to any quests, and I won't leave the base. Like I'm just gonna be sitting there in that cistern, hanging out, drinking an ale the whole game. Like I think I just want to be like flavor, you know? I want to be background flavor to a game.
Nice, I like it.
Card-carrying member of the Thieves Guild, but you don't have to interact with the character at all, and I just have the same 5 voiced lines for the entire game.
Yeah. And since it's Bethesda, they'll make you do the line takes in alphabetical order.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. But
Yeah.
there is
Basically,
a
the only
non-zero
question
chance
is-
that I could be voiced by Patrick Stewart.
Basically, the only question is whether or not the chair you're sitting in has rendered in or not, or if you're just doing the pose.
But I got the cool armor sets that are like guild exclusives.
It's true, yeah. All the bling, none of the hard work.
College
It's
of
great.
Winterhold also works for this, except there's a much lower survival rate for their NPCs, so I feel like I'm better off in the Thieves Guild.
True.
Doesn't
true.
the Thieves Guild get completely murdered in that
You are
quest line?
thinking of the Assassins variant, the Black Hand. They get
Oh,
like
that's a different
murked.
quest. That's the one that Doug always does.
No.
Yeah, it's a fun one, but it's one of the only ones in the game where there is like, and now all these NPCs are
Oh,
gone.
Dark Brotherhood quest
Dark
line.
Brotherhood,
Yeah, right.
There
Yep,
it is, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, Thieves Guild's fine. Everyone lives, I think, in that one.
Seems
for
the
most part.
assassin has become the assassinated. Anyway.
Yeah, but Red, I think we're coming up on the aforementioned bit that I like. You doing the outro for this podcast.
Oh, shucks. Well, I wouldn't want to disappoint my adoring fans. Thank you all so much for listening or watching for this extremely unstandard, except it is standard, we just do it only once a year, episode of the Overly Sarcastic Podcast. We will be back in 2 weeks, not in video, only in audio, for another more normal episode of the Overly Sarcastic Podcast. And if you're a patron, go there, because we're about to hang out for another 30 minutes for the as previously mentioned, the After show, which we only started doing this year. That's another landmark that we didn't
innovation.
just mention at all. But yeah, we're just going to hang out for another 30 minutes, shoot the shit. I'm going to do something more exciting with my string lights that Indigo's going to hate, but I think it's going to be fun.
Earlier. That's a
I did.
promise she's carrying
It's
on.
gonna happen.
I've exercised commendable self-control because there wasn't a funny bit in which I would have been able to do it. But the remote's been in my hand this entire time. Anyway, until next time, I've been Red.
I've been Blue.
This has been the Overly Sarcastic Podcast. I fucked up my hair. Okay, we're good.